purpose of writing this book was to really make the history of a very interesting time in India available and accessible specifically to a new generation, and of course anyone who has a passing interest in those times. To answer your question, why a biography of Ranjit Singh? Well, first of all, this is not a biography of Ranjit Singh, technically speaking. It is the figure of Ranjit Singh looms large in the book, of course, because it is about his court. When I started learning about Ranjit Singh as part of my journey, as I was embracing my identity and trying to understand it better, I was absolutely fascinated to learn about this plethora of very colorful characters who populated his court. Very diverse characters, of course, you know, Sikhs, non-Sikhs, many non-Indians as well. That's really what engaged my attention, and that's really what this book is about. It's about a bevy of characters who were around Ranjit Singh, his advisors, his generals, his wives, his concubines. And as we learn their stories, an image of Ranjit Singh starts to emerge, reflected in his interactions with all of them, and our perception being shaped very much by his interactions with all of them. This is a very personal work. Just to give you a little bit of context, I, of course, was born in India. I was raised in Sikkim, in Bangkok, and actually Calcutta was one of my favorite cities I would often visit as a boy. Being in Sikkim, I was quite far removed from anything Sikh, other than my form and my family's form, which was very much Sikh. There was really not much engagement because we didn't have a community. My school textbook certainly didn't talk about the Sikh Empire, so there was almost nothing that I knew about this period of history when I left India. Gosh, I'm trying to remember how many years it's been, more than 30 years ago. When we get away from our roots, a lot of us start to value them more, perhaps. And that's really the story of every person who's out in the diaspora, and I was no different. I started reading, driven by an interest in learning about who my forebears were and where they came from, and I engaged with Sikh history. Of course, I was very inspired by reading early Sikh history, but when I came to Ranjit Singh's court, the romance of the court, the tremendous successes, and the very improbable kingdom that the scion of a petty fiefdom managed to carve out for himself was absolutely fascinating to me. The tragedy of the fall of the kingdom can only be described as Shakespearean. You know, those of you who will read the book will understand exactly what I'm talking about. Here we had this tremendous empire which rubbed shoulders with the British Raj and really was the only other power of consequence in the subcontinent at that time. In a matter of a few years after Ranjit Singh's passing, ceased to exist. So it's really the romance and tragedy of the story of the rise of Ranjit Singh and then the precipitous fall of his empire, informed heavily by the very colorful characters that Ranjit Singh surrounded himself by, the desire to tell their story and his story in a very, very engaging and accessible manner is what brought me to this work.